and start talking whenever you need.
Okay, where are we going here?
You left off
Oh.
with the guy who just passed you on the
Right,
test.
okay. And he said, I'm going to go talk to me, to that pilot that washed you. And, don't worry, he says, you're okay for now. So that was good words, and from then on, we accumulated a total of 60 hours in primary flying school, and I got through with all the book work, and there was plenty of book work. And it was very, very difficult on the classroom work for me because I was limited, very limited in science, and they even got into algebra and things of this nature that I really hadn't gotten into while I was in the short time I was in high school. So that was tough, but I had a lot of help from fellow cadets. I really did, loads of it. And anyways, I managed to get through all of that. I don't think I probably had good grades, but academically, but flying, I was considered very good. And in fact, I was top of the what do you call it, as far as that went with my group. There was only two of us, but it was still the top. And then when you finished that, then of course they selected you. And many, we had like 26%, I think, of the primary flying group that I was in were washed out. And they had a congressional committee that investigated this for the simple reason that they couldn't be washing out that many pilots, and be able to obtain their goals. So they had a big investigation about it, and it didn't affect me because I was in the category that was going to continue on. But those, when they had a procedure that if you washed out, they didn't, you usually went by whatever rank you were before you became a cadet. And a lot of the guys that were cadets had come in from the ranks. They had been some sergeants and corporals, stuff like that they had been. And that's the rank that they had presumed or continued with in a reserve. So when if they would wash out, well, then they'd revert back to their rank and remain in the service. Or they'd give you a chance that if you wanted to go try for, you get this one, glider pilot training, that they'd put you into that. Well, they didn't have too many volunteers for that, I'll tell you, glider pilot, but it was a difficult, very difficult course that they had to. So none of my friends that were washed out went into the glider pilot training that I know of, anyways. They all went and stayed in the service and in the Air Corps as various ranks and occupations, military occupations. Well, come graduation day from there, and it was a big day. We graduated and we went to, I was assigned to Enid, Oklahoma. Enid Air Force, Enid Air Base, Army Air Base, I think it is. They got a banner over there about that was what they call basic flying. So now from basic flying you went into a real airplane, because this is where you had all the instruments that they had. You had the radios, you had all the instruments that they had at the time that would help you navigation wise and so on, that you didn't have in your primary flying school and that little aircraft that we flew. And this one went up to, this was 450 horsepower. So we went up from 160 to 450 horsepower. However, it still had it was a low-wing monoplane, and it was called a BT-13, or they had some BT-15s, which I flew both, depending on how many they had. And it had hoods on them. And in the previous one, we didn't have hoods on it. We had windshields, and that was about all. And this one, we have regular hoods like you find in current airplanes that you could open and close and remain in there. And this is where they went into flying, instrument flying, and landings and takeoffs and dead prop landings. Um, and it was tough. What they had is in the instrument training, they had what they call a link trainer. That you had to take so much link trainer in on the ground, but it was a simulated airplane that you got into, and they put you through all kinds of maneuvers. While under the hood, you were actually blind. You just had your instruments that you were flying by. You couldn't. There was, you were enclosed, and then they put you through various type of situations, and to see how you would react on it. You had to take so many hours of that too, in addition to regular flying. Like I think that was, you had to have 10 or 15 hours of link trainer, they call it. And from link trainer, why then you went into your, as I said, into regular instrument flying. So the instructor, what he would do, he'd be sitting in the back seat, and he could, you'd, okay, close up, he said, Mr. Reese, when he was going to start to give you the training. And you had a hood enclosure that really enclosed the cockpit on you so that you couldn't see out, So, okay, he said, get you at the end of the runway and line you up. You had to do this. You line yourself up now and lock your tail wheel, and you got your heading and so on the runway. He says, no, okay, for the power tour. And you had power, and then you had your other instruments that, the other instruments that you had to operate in order to stay aligned with the runway and everything. And it was not easy, because this was simulating, of course, taking off when it was fogged to the ground and you couldn't see more than 100 yards or 50 yards ahead of you, And once you got to the once you could feel your wheels lift up, oh, it was a great feeling that you made it safely to the end of the runway or in the airborne. And then airborne, and you started to draw back on your control stick. And then, okay, you'd be strictly flying by, well, you had, not only in the first training, back in the primary training, you had needle ball and airspeed. That was what they tried to teach you in, which was fundamental. I mean, it was fundamental, but it was necessary. Those three instruments would save you save your life on many occasions. When your power went out, for instance, or your electric went out on your aircraft, most of your instruments would be dead in there, except your needle ball airspeed. Your compass would be there, but needle ball airspeed, you had to learn how to control your airplane with needle ball airspeed. And on several times later on in my career, I had to only go to needle ball airspeed, and that was flying fighters now. And you're going along at a good clip when this can happen. So, anyways, you learn how to do this, and if you're astute enough, you do. And it was very difficult to get through the basic indoctrination of instrument flying. You had gyros and everything that would you could tell if you were going down or up or right or left, and all of this. You could do all this by the instruments alone. And once you got the knack of it, it wasn't very difficult at all. Then it was up to your handling of your controls and all of that. But so he gives you so much instrument flying training, and then all kinds of acrobatics and everything they put you through. They wanted you to go to loops, and made loops, and they made, you name them, MMOs, and all of the tactics that you'd have to have in flying, and that could be used in combat. We went through that, and I had another 90 hours in that. We had a cadet club in town, and we were real cadets then. We were living nicely. You still lived in barracks at that time, though. And you went from the country club, which was, back to barracks living, but then you were a pretty good cadet at that time. I successfully completed that, and you had check flights that you had to go through there too to see if you were completed. Some of the guys didn't have fewer percentage or smaller percentage that failed at that time for one reason or another. Or sometimes it's because of other things that occurred. You had an automobile accident, or you were doing this and that, and so on. You got drunk a couple of times, or and stuff like that, or got arrested, and oh boy. And this happened, and even Oklahoma at that time was a dry state. There was no booze in there at all, except if you had $10, you could buy a bottle of booze. And anyways, we'd go into the club, and it was nice. Some of our guys were married, and they were married before they went into the cadets. And you had, I think, the limit at the time, I think, was 18 to 26 was where the age limit was in getting into the cadets. And we had a number of them that didn't have any children, but they had wives, and we'd all meet in the officers' club, or the cadet club. And it was that was a greater life and a nice instrument. When tougher on the flying, we had navigation, and that was the main thing. We had navigation when we went in the primary, but we had more strict navigation, and a lot of it was blind flying, going from one place to another. We'd go from one town to another. In those days, they did not have the electronic guidelines and so on, or radar or anything like that that you had available in later years. And it was they had you'd go by lights on the ground in those days, and various signals, and you could see on the ground. And if they had these ground things, they were lights that went one way, and then they went up, and you saw a green light. That meant there was an airfield there. That was a tower. On the tower, they had either a white light or a green light. If it had a green light, the flashing green light, and it also the light had a brake. And if it was so fast, then you knew that it was a certain kind of field, and it could accommodate you. And a lot of that was done because of instrument flying, bad flying, or navigation, to help you in your navigation. Well, the main thing in navigation was railroads. We used to fly railroads, they called it, because you know where a railroad was always going to go. End up someplace where you could follow it on the map very easy. Sometimes you get screwed up on it too, but it was great. I didn't have any trouble with instrument flying at all. It was very good, and I had some good instructors that were very thorough. And I was able to graduate from there. I think I had 3 tests, military they were this time, all military. And 3 tests that I passed. I didn't have any problem at all. And then graduated finally from the basic and went to advanced. Well, then when we went from advanced, we went to the North American AT-6, which was a 650 horsepower engine trainer. And it was a low wing. I've had low wings all my time. Some of them had the Stearmans were biplanes and stuff like that, but I had low wing monoplanes all my flight training. And anyways, the AT-6 had a landing gear too. You could raise and lower your landing gear, and that was the first one we had that did this. And it had a lot of, it was a fast airplane. Faster than we thought. Beautiful flying airplane. I think probably one of the easiest and nicest airplanes to fly in my time was the AT-6, the Texan they called it, the advanced trainer. I took to that like a duck takes to water. I just sailed through that and loved to fly, and had all my tests that I did on navigation, went to night flying and navigation and everything. Had no trouble at all, period. And then comes graduation day. Well, before graduation day,